All right, we have two dynamic speakers here today, All right, we have two dynamic speakers here today, Dr. Arlo Molimpa and James Young. Arlo Molimpa and James Young. Dr. Arlo Molimpa is going to be talking about creation, and he is here from Chula Vista, California. He has a Doctor of Science in Chemical Engineering. He's also taught in Bible colleges, such as Gateway College of Evangelism, Christian Life College, and Conquerors Bible College. He's also taught in mainstream teaching at schools at Wisconsin State University, Macalester College, and San Juan Delta College. Dr. Molimpa has been a pastor, and he also does home missionary. He has done home missionary in Stevens Point. He's a pastor currently at High Wycombe, and he was a pastor at High Wycombe in England. Okay. That's for Dr. Molimpa. We have speaking on evolution, James Young. James was born, raised, and continues to reside in Hillsborough County, Florida. Today, James is chairman of the Board of Atheists of Florida, past president of the Humanist Association of West Central Florida, and is a member/supporter of numerous other organizations, including the American Civil Liberties Union, American Unions for Separation, Council for Secular Humanism, Humanists of Florida, and the American Humanist Association. I'm going to ask the audience if you have any questions to write any questions that you have from both of the speakers on the back of this card. And then we have somebody that's going to pick up these questions from you. And we have a 5-minute rebuttal from each of the speakers. And then we have the question answers from the cards that you submitted. I'm going to read your questions up here. We're going to select about 10 questions, and I'll read it from up here. And we have our first speaker, Dr. Arlo Molimpa.
Thank you, Natasha. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for coming. The debate subject, I don't believe she read, but the debate subject that I was given was the following. The first topic is the theory of evolution is not scientific. The second is that the theory of evolution contradicts established scientific laws. And the third is that the theory of evolution is, for all practical purposes, mathematically impossible. Now, I really would probably call this 30-minute presentation Science versus Evolution. I think we need to define, first of all, what evolution is. I will read a definition that I found. It says, the evolutionary system attempts to explain the origin, development, and meaning of all things in terms of natural laws and processes which operate today as they have in the past. No extraneous processes requiring the special activity of an external agent or creator are permitted. Now, in addition to that, the theory says that particles evolved into elements, elements into complex chemicals into simple living systems, and simple living systems evolved into complex life, complex animal life into man by means of the properties of material itself. Now, assumptions are made in the evolutionary theory. They are the following: that non-living material gave rise to living material. Also, that single-celled organisms gave rise to multi-celled organisms. That invertebrates, creatures without backbones, gave rise to vertebrates. Fish gave rise to amphibian. Amphibian evolved into reptiles. Reptiles formed eventually birds and mammals. These are the evolutionary assumptions. Now let's talk about science. What is science? Well, first of all, if you go to a dictionary and look up a definition of science or other sources, I will not bore you with a long dictionary definition, but I'll give you some key words. If it's scientific, it's observable. If it's scientific, it needs to be subject to some kind of experimentation. If it's scientific, you ought to be able to verify it. In other words, if I discover something in San Diego, you ought to, with the same equipment, be able to verify it and repeat it here in Tampa, Florida. Okay? I'm here to say that the theory of evolution has never been observed. Never has a fish been observed to change into an amphibian. Never has an experiment been performed to do this. It cannot be verified, and it has never been repeated. Thus, the theory of evolution is not scientific by any of these four words or definitions. Now let's talk about the steps in the scientific method. The steps in the scientific method are, first of all, you have some sort of a problem or question. For example, I have 3 balls here. I have a ball. What is this? Golf ball. The yellow one is what? Ping pong ball. And anybody know what the white one is? Wiffle ball. Now, the problem, I'll give you this as an illustration of the steps in the scientific method. The problem is if I drop these 3 balls, which will hit the floor first? Okay, that's the problem. Now, the young lady in the front gave a hypothesis. That's an educated guess. She said the golf ball would hit first. What are some other hypotheses? They could all hit at the same time. Other, what? The heaviest one hit first. Okay, was I already put there that it all hit the same time? I guess another hypothesis is it wouldn't drop at all. Another hypothesis would be that it would go upward. Well, those might not be very good ones. But hypotheses is some kind of a guess that then we can test. Okay, now, many means of solving problems, we solve the democratic method. In other words, we would vote. And let's say, I'm not going to take the time, but let's say I would vote. Say how many believe the golf ball will hit first? How many believe the ping pong? How many believe the wiffle ball? How many believe they hit at the same time? Well, if we took a vote and the majority was one thing, then it's over in the democratic method. Okay? I believe the democratic method, good method to solve political problems. Okay, but the scientific method differs. Scientific method would be a controlled experiment. In other words, we don't just vote on it. We actually drop them and see which one hits first. Now, my purpose today is not for you to know which one hits first. I want to show you what the scientific method is. Okay, then you would correlate the data. If we really had a sophisticated experiment, we'd probably measure the temperature of the air, the barometric pressure, we'd measure the mass of the balls, we'd measure the distance it fell, we'd time it and so forth, and then we ought to be able, whatever we come up with, we ought to be able to check it, repeat it, and verify it. Okay, now there are other methods of solving problems. I mentioned the democratic method. Okay, that's when you vote and the majority wins. I still believe it's a very good method for solving political problems. The second method is to appeal to higher authority. For example, what does some established authority have to say about it? Aristotle was thought to be a thinker for centuries. What did he say? And by appealing to higher authority, he said the heaviest one would hit first. But Galileo was different. Galileo used the scientific method. He took 2 balls of different masses, dropped them from the Tower of Pisa. That's the scientific method, an experiment, observing which one falls first, being able to repeat it and verify it. I will not drop the balls right now, but if you want to know what happens, do the scientific method. Get a stepladder in your garage, get somebody who is going to observe it and find out. Okay, now there is a difference between a law and a theory. For example, if you drop this ball, that's The law of what?